Oh,
And
it looks like it's live.
And we are live for the Musty Wargamers episode 16, the longest season so far as number of episodes since we started.
Yeah, we're almost actually becoming a actual season when it comes to all this entertainment stuff, you know.
Exactly. I don't know, what does a TV show usually have?
The typical season, yeah, I think they run, well, it depends. If it's like Hulu, Netflix, HBO, that's typically 10 episodes, I think.
Mm-hmm. So we're actually doing pretty good.
Yeah, so we're above the power curve here.
And I'm sure we still have a couple more in. I mean, we're usually pretty easy going about when we stop it. It's usually we kind of stop like around when June starts, right?
Yeah, somewhere in the first. I think the first part of June.
Gosh, we're almost there. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. In 2 weeks, it will be June.
Yeah. So we'll do an announcement about that because we have some discussions about our final episode, but we'll have some discussions, you and I, as to when it's going to actually be. But it's possible that it'll be the next one.
Yeah, possibly.
But,
yeah.
Possibly. We'll see.
I think the one time we went to the second or third week one year, I think the first season we went that late. Yeah.
And then we'll have to kind of show our projects too. Like, you know, I should be pretty much done by then. I'll show some of my progress tonight. I haven't shown any progress so far, but I have got some pretty good progress on the project so far. And so
I'm almost done with my project.
Yeah, you actually kind of came out swinging with it a little bit faster than me. Sure.
I put in some hours last night and some hours today.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of playing my board game over there, the Empires and Alliances, you know, I've been playing a turn every night.
Right.
I decided to forego a couple nights just to put some work in because I've had those. Last week was miserable. I had migraines all week. So it was one of those weeks where it's like, if you want to talk to me and you're talking to me, I have to go, hi, how's it going? I can't move my head because I have a bad neck and the muscles will cramp up so I can't turn my head, and then it turns into a massive migraine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, here we have a lot of folks that get it with the weather changes too, because we have these like pressure systems that come through the mountain areas called Chinooks, and we get a lot of folks that get them. And so I am all too familiar with that, but not myself personally. I've been, thankfully, but lots of people. So yeah. So let's see here. Looks like it's just us right now. Let's see. Yeah.
All quiet on the comment front. We even have anybody watching today?
Not yet. Not yet. We're a little slow to start, so we'll see how many people we get tonight. But so you kind of talked a little bit about what you've been doing. I know you have a little bit of competition between the gaming and the hobbying side as far as your time that you've been spending. I know sometimes you have to actually make that sacrifice where you can only choose one or the other, you know, if you're trying to get some progress done. But I'm going to zoom in on you, and you can tell me about what you've been up to and then your musty drink.
All right. Move out of the way, Supergirl. You're in the way. Supergirl number 1. Supergirl number 2. All right. So, as you can see here, I've been... can you even see that? I'm afraid to tip it. Yeah, there we go. I'm afraid to tip it too much without them sliding everything.
Yeah, looking good.
But I've worked on them a lot today. Did a little bit of work. You can see there's even a banner. It's like one squad is done. These guys over here, these guys right here.
Yeah.
Those 20 are, I think there's 20 in there. Yeah, 20. Those are finished.
I got a question for you.
Then, what's that?
With your paint scheme that you have there, that is one of the suggested paint schemes, isn't it?
It might have been in one of the older books.
The only reason I said so is that I saw some of those online. I actually happened to just see some high elves, and like people had them in a green paint scheme. And I know we were talking about how it's not the typical, that there's like the blue and the white, but there is people that do them in green too, huh?
Yeah, it's like I went with green because I always like the sea green type thing. That's the green for the woods, green for the sea, green, and I went with blue, not blue on them, but more red for the hotness on them.
Yeah,
because you have a little bit of brass gold color on them for warmth, and everything else is kind of cold, cool colors.
Right. They're coming along really good.
Yeah, it's like all I really have to do is I have some touch-ups on this squad right here, some of the plastic guys. The plastic is, like, as you know, not so great when it comes to Games Workshop stuff, but at times.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some of the metal. I finished the metal ones up because I did all the metal ones first. So I still have 10 to touch up and finished. Actually, it's probably more like 6 left to finish up. And then I'll have the hardest thing I did today was sizing up the banner, finding a banner I liked, and because all I could find was a banner, half a banner. So then I was like, okay, I got half the banner. So flipping stuff around, pasting it together, and then sizing it to the right size so it would print out to the right size. And it was kind of a pain, but I spent probably an hour. If I hadn't spent the hour doing that today, I would probably be done.
Well, I still have a ways to go. I'll show you mine in a minute. But what do you got there as a musty drink tonight?
It's Peachtree Brewing Company. It's in Des Moines.
Oh, nice.
Blonde Fatale is the name of the brew.
Is that like a play on Fat Ale Fatale, or is it an ale?
It's an ale. It's like you got the Femme Fatale.
Yeah, that's right. Nice. And so is it it's like a light colored ale?
Yes, it's a blonde.
Yeah.
It's their version of a blonde ale.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It looks good.
It's good stuff. See how this tastes. This usually tastes pretty good. Yep. A little, I have to see. I think it's got like 7 or 8% alcohol in it.
Oh, so it's pretty strong.
Yeah. Serve at 8 degrees Celsius, 45 degrees Fahrenheit.
Looks like we got goat survivors in the house. Hello, Ghost.
Oh, where the heck is it? I can't find where it says how much is on there.
Well,
pretty high.
Before I go into my my update, I heard that you had told me how Gen Con has been canceled.
Yes.
And so that's kind of just from a little news section here. That's I guess that's to be expected. I think we kind of thought that would probably happen.
Yeah. Huh? Well, the big thing on that is that a convention that big takes about 2 to 3 months minimum to plan.
Yeah.
And if the state of Indiana hasn't opened up yet, it's past its born on date, basically. So it's not happening. And the same thing is being said. They say we're going to have like the Iowa State Fair here, which is a big impact on me because it's kind of like a small side business for me. Right. So they're saying maybe there are a whole bunch of shows that have already canceled. All the big stage shows have canceled.
Okay.
So there a lot of that stuff may not happen. So if it even happens at all. So
well, I'm glad that I didn't invest because it really didn't make sense at that point. It didn't seem like it was going to happen. So one thing I was going to tell you is I made a little bit of a Star Wars Armada purchase just recently, and Ghost Survivors just popped in, and I know he likes Star Wars Armada, and so I'm going to save what I got, but it's a bit of a big ship, the biggest ship that I bought for the game so far, and so it actually was at 25% off, and which is weird.
So you got the big giant super Star Destroyer?
No, I didn't get that. But at the same time, it is weird because some of anything that's newer, or the newer ships, tend not to go on sale usually. It's usually, if anything, they go out of stock with Armada pretty quickly. And one of my buddies just sent me a text and was just like, "Oh, look, this place has got a place that we have in Canada here is an online retailer." Got them in, and he said 25% off, and so I was like, time to pull the trigger. I've been knowing I was going to get this, but the moment I saw that, I'm like, okay, this was the time it's meant to be. So,
or is this the Mon Calamari, the big giant Mon Calamari ship?
It's not. No. No, you'll see. All
right.
And so I'll show you kind of my update here, and let's see here. Okay, so
the orcs in the house.
Yeah, so they're not, the red's not looking that pretty yet. Looks like we got BMB Builder in the house. Hey there, thanks for joining us. And let's see here. And so what I've got the orcs for the challenge here, and the red is actually the first base coat, and it's a little bit brighter than I wanted it a little bit bright, but when I'm still planning on doing some
wash.
Well, I'm definitely going to be doing a wash at the end. With all my other stuff, I've done an oil wash that's a bit of a mixture of brown, actually they're right here, and red together to give it a bit of a deeper wash, in the crevices and things. But I am going to be doing not black lining, but basically black lining with a dark red to give it that old school sort of GW, old hammer look. And then I'm also going to be doing a highlight still and then the wash to sort of tone it all down and bring it together. But I did do a little bit of work on the skin tones, but I don't think I've got them where I'm completely finished yet. I'm going to still do a little bit of brightening, and I went a little darker this time with the orc skin than last time, but I'm going to brighten them up just a little bit more on the highlights and the edges. So BMB says, your face looks so clean / smooth. I'm assuming he's talking about my Shavelicious handle. And so, and Ghost Survivor says, those look cool. Yeah, I do like these. I'm happy with the way they're coming out so far. I did something funny too. On this guy, I gave it his little chopper arm and eyeball.
I made mine into a when I did mine, it was like an alligator crocodile.
Yeah.
That's what made mine into a crocodile.
That's kind of what it looks like too. Yeah, exactly. And so I'm having fun with them so far. I like the way they look, but definitely I'm going to be doing a lot with the armor still. It's sort of just the base paint.
I on the shoulder pad there, I had the crocodile arm, like the mouth and everything, and I put a clock, like a big giant clock face on his shoulder.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's cool. That's awesome.
So you get the idea where that came from. Peter Pan.
And so yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on right now. I've done the same thing with the Dreadnought. Although with the Dreadnought, I haven't done the Goblin yet, the Gretchen that goes in him, but I'm working on the Flamer there as well, and doing the same sort of color scheme, and just working away at them. And I should be done with these. I find once I get the base paint on, and once I get to a certain point, my favorite is doing the highlighting and glazing and all that. And I think I'll shoot through it and get done with them pretty quickly at that point. Let me zoom back out here. Actually, I say zoom back out. Let me switch my camera here for a second. And so I could show my smooth, Shavelicious face, as BMB Builder says. And so what I've got for my musty drink tonight is Arbor Lure.
Arbor Lure.
Yeah, and it's actually, I don't know how to pronounce this. It says Abunda, Abinat is this name underneath. They say that this is it's a blend, I believe, because there's no year on it, but it says Abinat means of the origin in Gaelic. It's a respectful toast to Aberlour's founder, James Fleming. And so this is sort of like a, I guess a signature line, like it's a line where it's like a toast to their founder, but it's basically soaked in sherry casks. So it has a nice kind of after flavor on it. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm having for my musty drink. There we go.
Yeah.
And so
last time it was, I had rum last time and you were having.
Yeah, that's right. I was having beer.
Yeah. So we flip-flopped.
Looks like we got a couple. Looks like Chris from Walkabout Games has joined us. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm old. I'm having flashback of the late '80s, seeing these orcs because that's how old these are."
Like, isn't it sad that I used to own these things?
Exactly.
I remember buying them off the shelf in blisters.
Yep. We got lots of laughs from Ghost, and then we've got. BNB says, I really want the Star Wars droid tank. Have you seen it out yet over there? And so I'm assuming you might be talking about the Legion game by Fantasy Flight for Star Wars Legion, which I don't currently play. However, we happen to have Walkabout Games in the house tonight, who's just commented, and I know he plays Legion, Star Wars Legion, and he might be able to comment. He says... let's see. I had them all. I'm not sure if he's talking about all the scotches that are available or if he's talking about all the models. All the models. But yeah, so he might be able to comment on that. Because I know BMB is a big model builder, and he does get some of the miniature game stuff for like painting models and modeling and stuff, like just to paint them up and stuff. I know he's not a Wargamer specifically, but yeah.
Yeah, I have a bunch of 1/35th scale models I have to put together someday. Throw them together yet.
Chris says that tank isn't out yet, sadly.
Yeah, that's one game system I've thought about getting into.
I think it has everything to be fun for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a matter of how many games you have on your plate and what you're doing, I suppose, right?
That's the big thing is that I have, well, one of the guys I play with occasionally, Jesse, he's thought about getting into it. We've talked about it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can see myself playing it because I like Star Wars. And it's like something that I could get into.
Yeah, for sure. Like when they first came out with the original set and I saw all the stormtroopers, I just had this flashback of like being a kid in the late 70s, right? Like just all of these like stormtroopers and stuff. It's kind of hard it's kind of hard to pass up. Even Darth Vader, like even painting up Darth Vader. I mean
oh yeah. I got the I don't know if you ever seen them. There's the plastic they're already pre-painted Star Wars miniatures. They came out. It has all the latest expansion. It's basically all the first 6 movies. I have the box, the starter box over there, just chock full of Star Wars miniatures.
Looks like
Dan's in the house.
Dan Booman's in the house as well. Cool. So, what do you say? I think we have a fair number, a couple good topics tonight. Actually, I think for both of our topics tonight, we normally get a lot of participation from the audience, but I think in particular for both of our topics, and even particularly the first one, it might be helpful to get commentary because I think it's going to be a lot of it's going to be a matter of opinion. And also, like our first topic tonight is basically, for the most part, from the current games that have come out, like let's say in the last year or so, maybe a little bit beyond, which ones appear to be the most successful. And the interesting, or appear to be successful. The interesting thing to me is that there's so much out there. There's so much out there that there's stuff that's come out like a year ago that I never even heard of, and it could still be out there, but it's just because there's so much. And there's so much that I don't look into because you just have to narrow down, but some of them just seem to come and go, or they don't, they may have followings in pockets around the world, but as far as on YouTube or Facebook, they kind of come and then you don't really hear about them again. And then I get the impression that they're not as successful, if that's the case. And then there are others that just seem to come back over and over again. Like, they come out and then like people are doing a lot of videos on them. There may be a lull, but then you see more videos coming up. And so like that to me kind of appears successful. And so, kind of thought it might be interesting to just have a chat about that. Like, which ones are the ones that seem to have hung around, that have come out in the last bit? Now, obviously, there's the big leagues like Warhammer 40K, maybe even like Star Wars X-Wing. Like, there's just certain ones that are out and still being played. And even I'll say like Infinity. Like Infinity, I know people are still playing it. They're still doing releases on it, and it's not really a surprise that people are still playing it. It's not really a current game. But aside from those big ones, like what are your thoughts? The ones that you kind of were thinking about?
Well, if you throw out the Games Workshop stuff, there's kind of a preference of go away, Papa. Jeez.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah.
Go away, Papa.
Yeah, it's a new game where you play, and if right in the middle of you're about ready to roll the dice, and it's like right in the face, Papa. I was looking at it. Spent the last couple of days just trying to figure out what's new, what's not new, or what's kind of new. And I went as far back as a year and a half, because some stuff was released in like the third, fourth quarter of 2018, which really didn't start catching steam until 2019. And how much stuff has steam right now, that's the other thing.
And there's a lot that's come out 4 years ago that seems like it's only been a year to me.
Yes.
Like that's my perception of time is really off.
Like for some, we've had this conversation, like when the Games Workshop 40K and Fantasy, when it went to Age of Sigmar, I was just thinking, well, it's just last year. And then it was like, no, that was 3 years ago. I'm like, what? It's been that long? Well, let's just see here. We've talked about one on my list is Star Wars Imperial Assault. That I think came out last year or 2018, late 2018, I think it was.
Well, it came out before Legion. I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's Star Wars Legion. That's but between the two of them, that's a system that I have yet to see anybody play, but it seems to go off the shelf. So obviously it's going someplace.
Yeah.
People are playing it somewhere.
Legion seems to be still picking up, and I still see a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah. It's one of those ones that it's very intriguing to me. It seems to be popular, but I haven't seen it be popular being played, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's something that's like I look at it and go, I could see myself getting into it because I like Star Wars. So
well, YouTube's a kind of a big gauge for me, and I realize it's only a snapshot of, or a section, I should say, of what you can see, as far as information. And I still, it does seem like it has its following, Legion, for sure. And it makes sense. With the license, it makes a lot of sense.
The interesting thing about that one is that of all the gaming channels that I watch, Beasts of War, aka on Tabletop now, they changed their name. They're the only ones I've really seen do anything with it. It's like I know what's out there because, like I said, it goes off the shelf. It seems, you go in and it's like, oh, it's sold out. So, but where's it being played?
Yeah,
I'm not sure. So.
Well, it's always the case, right? That we have one representative of the model building community in here tonight, BMV Builder, but I know there are folks that buy the models to play, and then there are folks that are collectors and folks that will use them for modeling or even dioramas and things. And so, the stuff leaves the shelves for lots of different reasons. My assumption is there are folks that are playing the game as a game, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, a big thing that you're paying for with those products too are the cards and the things to be able to play it as a game. You're not really just paying only for the kit, right? And so that probably increases the price, I'm guessing.
Yeah, a little bit. And some of it, I guess maybe you're talking about a lot of that Star Wars Legion stuff you can't get because it's always sold out. I wonder how much is that recently being sold out, or because of the pipeline work is made. I think it's made in China, so I'm not sure if that's because of what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But Dust was one that never did seem to. It seemed to be popular for a while. It was like the flavor of the day, but it never seemed to take off around here.
It's funny because I have a friend that bought like a ton of the Dust stuff.
And,
and it is one of the things that kind of, if you're buying it mainly to eventually play it as a game, it did seem like it kind of got dropped or something happened. Did the company fold? I don't know what happened.
I think it went out of business, I believe, and then it got rolled into another company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my experience. What I think would happen to it.
What would be your second one? Like you mentioned, Legion / Imperial Assault. What would be another one?
Well, we have one game system that seems to, we got the new edition of King's War that's come out this last year, I think.
So it's a new edition of a game that's kind of tested and proven, though, a little bit, right?
Yeah, it has a lot of backbone to it. I've seen it played in our local shop after the fantasy died, and people were like, well, we tried the Age of Sigmar. We're not happy with Age of Sigmar because we don't want to play a skirmish game. We want to play a grand battle game. And the people that always played the grand battle games of Warhammer Fantasy were the ones that were playing the old Kings of War. And I got into some of those games too. And it was not a bad system. And I just went to a new edition. But I haven't seen a new edition here. So that's the big question. Was it not popular enough around here? People didn't buy enough of it because that's a lot of the kind of the barometer temperature. I check the temp or whatever barometric pressure of the game.
Yeah,
it's the local store. If they start stocking it, that means there's a market for it.
Right. Like Bill's in the house as well.
Hey, Bill.
And Sean Bulger join us. Sean, hello. So, yeah, my reference point, because I haven't seen it played a lot locally for Kings of War, but I've seen some folks express interest in the historical side of it too. There's the Kings of War historical. And so on the YouTube front, with some of the channels I follow, I've noticed it's come out that way where people, have talked about it, from the historical side. And I know that it definitely has its following, Kings of War, but it definitely seemed to be talked about a lot more when Warhammer Fantasy ended, Fantasy Battles, and Age of Sigmar started. And so, and so I think that was when I heard the most about it. So give me one more, and then I'll do 3 from my list.
Well, we can always go back to Star Wars X-Wing, second edition.
Yeah, I guess so. Although I kind of think of that as
because it's a totally new game.
Oh, is that right?
It's not compatible with the first edition.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah,
because they totally changed it out. So if you don't buy all the new dials and all the stuff for your ships, you just have the miniatures. You're stuck either playing first edition or going to second edition.
Right.
So that was something I say that has strength to it, but it's a lot of people are like me, didn't buy into getting into the second edition, but it is something that's new.
Yeah, that's true. It's new in that respect. So I'll throw a couple out here, and most of them are ones I've never played, and I think or don't play, and for the most part, you're kind of doing the same. I mentioned Gaslands because that's the car game, right? Gaslands, and I know Chris plays that. Walkabout Games, but I see that as I believe that. I thought I heard that they were coming out with another edition, or they came out with a second edition. But at the same time, there was a lot came up about it, but then it just keeps coming back. Like I see people playing it, and people talking about it. And so, yeah, that's kind of a niche game. It's where you're using cars, and things like that. And it's sort of like a Mad Max kind of thing. But that is something that just seems to have made it.
Yeah, so what I can say about Gaslands is that you can walk into Walmart or someplace like that and pick up some Matchbox / whatever small cars, diecast cars, and do some numbers on them, throw some bits and stuff on them, and turn them into whatever you want. For car. Basically, it's Car Wars. It's been
right. Chris says that the second edition Gaslands is out. I thought I heard that, and so that's probably one of the reasons why I saw the resurgence. But at the same time, people seem to like the game, and so I see that as one of the blue books by Osprey that was pretty successful. Like it's hung around. It's made it to a second edition. Another one that I'll mention, and I'm a bit biased with this, even though I don't play it right now, I own it, and I really think that Marvel Crisis Protocol, Asmodee, it's by oh gosh, Atomic Mass Games, but it's also who's it's supported by Asmodee. It's the parent company.
Yeah.
They, granted, their Facebook group is extremely active, and so I'm judging it by that. But I think there was a lot of buzz with it, and they're still releasing miniatures for it, and it kind of it's really new still, so it hasn't had to hit that new hump after maybe a year, of the game being out. And so but I think it's picked up steam really well. I think it's actually, basically has a strong likelihood of being successful. So I think the release was pretty successful in my mind. I mean, this is all without seeing financial numbers or knowing anything about the companies. It's just, really casual perception of that. But it's another game. It's got a strong license, right? I mean, Marvel in the cinema is like one of the biggest things ever. I mean, as far as cinema things right now, I mean, it's with Star Wars and stuff like that as far as the fan base. And so it's real kind of easy thing to sell, I think.
So when you get into the just the timing's right, if you get into where the stuff actually starts almost sells itself because the hype is going on at the time. That kind of helps out. And we got Todd just popped in. So
yeah. Hello, Iteran Hobbyist Todd. He says, "Whoa, did I get on here early enough to actually hear it live?" I think he came in right after when we were closing last time.
Yeah, it's like you missed maybe the first 30 minutes, but that's just.
I always feel bad when that happens. I feel like I'm like saying, "Okay, so everybody, it's been a great show."
Yeah, it's Todd, aka the Rogue, and walking around with your slippers and robes. So yeah, just relaxing.
Yeah. And so I think we both have big lists here, but like one of the ones I know this isn't really, really new, but I think Song of Ice and Fire, when it came out, I think was fairly successful, and it had a license to back it up. A lot of people like Game of Thrones, if not the books as well. Locally, I know friends that play it. As a matter of fact, I know many friends. Like, I've avoided it because I didn't want to get into, like, I wanted to focus on my Warhammer Fantasy. I didn't want to start painting another large army up or anything like that. But I heard really good things about the gameplay. I think at Gen Con last year, they announced the Baratheon sort of regiment that they were putting out there, and then it's been released, and but I think that was a game that is sort of kind of was successful.
That's on my list. So yeah.
We both probably have ones that are on the list.
Yeah, it's one of those games where it's seemed to be going off the shelf at our store. I hadn't seen it played at the store, but I know it's selling because, like you said, it's a popular genre. People just either they like the books or they like the TV show, or both. I like the TV show. The book sucked, but that's
Yeah.
just my opinion. Everybody has one, and I like the Protos Games is no more, isn't it? I think they went out.
I thought they did, and I really like the dropship too. It was a little too rich for my blood, but at the same time, I think when we do this sort of kind of episode, when we talk about games we perceive as successful, it's real easy to rattle off stuff that's out there. But at the same time, there's probably, we could almost have another topic another time about all the ones we think didn't quite make it. But I think Protos, maybe not recent, because I think it's happened a little while ago, but Protos Games would be an example. Their Alien sort of system, it got bought out by another company, I believe, right? Like there's another company that's now putting out board game style games with miniatures for aliens, right? It's not like a tabletop game, war game, but it's more of a miniature based board game. I have a couple of friends that have AVP 1 and 2, or they had AVP and then they released it again like a year or so later, updated, I believe. I could be wrong. Maybe it was Protos, but at the end of the day, I thought Protos did like a whole tabletop miniature game line. They all had like all your faction packs and everything that you could buy, as far as I know. But they're an example where it didn't quite make it.
Let's see, was it Protos that was doing the Warzone miniatures too?
Warzone. That name sounds familiar. I think so. I think you're right.
Warzone was a popular game, board game, miniature game back in the 90s.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And it's like I think they were the ones that brought that out too. I'm not sure if it was one of those things where they, because with a certain IPs like Aliens, you'd probably have to have a certain amount of income coming in to pay for the licensing fees.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's something that caused that company to have problems or not.
Well, it's a repetitive story, right? I mean, even like the Night Models with Marvel. I mean, the assumption is we don't really know, because they're not even necessarily allowed to talk about the reasons why that they can't do it, but usually in those arrangements. But at the same time, it's a common theme where people lose licenses at times, particularly smaller companies, that get the license and then kind of lose it.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons, like you look at Spartan Games, how they just up and folded because they couldn't really afford the licensing fees, I don't think, for the Halo stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or the sale. If the sales is like there's hype there, but if you don't get the sales,
right?
It's like I think with them it was like you're bringing something out about 2-3 years after the fact,
right?
And then it's like the hype is like died down because there's no more Halo stuff, games or anything coming out to back it up to keep the hype going, and there wasn't no I don't think there was enough crossover to go into. So the from the video over to the miniature stuff.
Right. Well, we have a very diverse sort of audience here tonight, and while you give me your next three, I'm going to ask the audience to give some comments of what they think fairly recent games that have come out in the last, let's say, year to 2 years, that have kind of risen above the rest to kind of hang around, not only be successful, but like kind of hang around. And then, so we'll just wait for those comments. And while those comments, we're waiting for those to come in, Rusty, give me another three from your list, but do you have any on there that are sort of kind of new games that are kind of fairly original in the last year or two that seem to have done well?
Yeah. Let's just go with one company. We have the Firelock Games.
Mm-hmm.
They have their Blood and Plunder expansion, which is Beyond. They have the original that came out about 2 years ago, roughly in that time frame for the original version. And they came out with an expansion with that came out, and that pretty much hit the market early last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year, they have their Blood and Valor and their Oak and Iron.
Okay.
Oak and Iron, which is their small ship scale game. Vic's in the house.
Yeah. Hey, Victor.
And that seems to be doing pretty good from what I heard, that the sales are doing really, really good for them.
Okay.
They're happy with it. and they're already talking about expanding it again. So
Mhm.
then the Blood and Valor is their World War One game. So that's basically their 28 mil version of that. And that seemed to be taking off pretty good too. And I see those guys, they seem to be doing well. That they're just finding these niches that are not really filled too much. And if you have people with an itch for a certain type of system, it's going to get find some legs and go running.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of the three that I'm looking at. I've really, to be honest with you, I already have the second expansion. I got the miniatures and stuff for it, and that's probably something I should start painting on this summer, get those going again. I really like the idea of the Oak and Iron, their small scale fleet stuff, because I like ships, and that's something I could see myself really getting into.
Yeah, absolutely. That did look good, and there's a lot of stuff coming out from Warlord Games. I mean, one of the things that I had on my list, and it was more of a question mark because I don't know how successful they are, but there seems to be a push for naval games right now. And like, there's Cruel Seas, Victory at Sea, and Black Seas, all from Warlord Games, all different time periods, and all seemingly different rule mechanics, like not the exact same thing.
The Black Seas is similar to the Oak and Iron. I think there's close in scale. I think the Black Seas one is slightly bigger in scale, just by a hair. And I think it's the same era, dealing with piracy and all that, fleet battles and stuff.
Yeah, Sean's talking about the Blood and Plunder 18th century expansion that you were talking about.
Yeah, there's already talk about there's going to be another expansion coming out. They'll probably do another Kickstarter come this fall.
So B&B says it's lunchtime here, but I really want to have a drink with you. Lots of laughs. And they always say that it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? Here it's actually closer to 9 o'clock
almost 10.
in the evening. Yeah.
It's almost 10 in the evening.
Well, I could say one thing for sure. We're not the ones stopping you.
Yeah.
Dan says, I agree that Firelux Games' recent products have been successful and actually original designs.
Yes.
The one thing I would say, I actually always thought it looked really cool because doing Musket and Tomahawks and Sharp Practice, I kind of avoided another miniature line. I didn't want to do another Black Powder game because I can barely get my collection painted that I'm doing for those. And so that's why, but I could see, like, if I wasn't doing what I was doing, I could easily do that instead. But I've not seen many, I've not looked for them, but I've not seen on the channels I subscribe to many Bauer reports for those games. So I wasn't sure. That's the hard thing, is it's to know how well the people really are doing. Is hard to know.
There's not a lot of channels that carry it as their prime issue when it comes to their battle reports. Seems to be there's a lot of people always talking about it. There's always the conversation, because I'm part of one of the Facebook groups that deals with it. So there's always chatter going on. Everybody's talking about it.
You see that info then, yeah. Just similar with me with Marvel Crisis Protocol, is I'm seeing all the stuff, and it's like a ton of stuff that's coming out on Facebook for that. Bill referenced BattleTech, which means I'm going to have a sip. For those of you that watch the show, you'll know why.
Yeah, the old Harmony Gold BattleTech issue. That's a disaster. If you know anything about that.
I don't, but I do know, and that BattleTech, being a game that's been around a really long time, I wasn't going to mention it. I do know, though, that with the video game release and then the new set releases of the new plastic miniatures, there's been lots of people that are, playing that. And then that does seem to be a game. I don't really consider it new, like something new in the last year or two, but I do think that by all accounts, it seems like it's done well. The releases for the miniature-based games.
Yeah, it's BattleTech has gone through another. There seem to be, like I've talked about before, they dumbed it down because they got a new rule book out that it's basically just kind of a very extremely simplified starter rules. There's no advanced rules or anything, and that seems to be what they want to be using for all the a lot of new players, getting them into the game system. which is causing what's sort of caused a lot of havoc in our recent games that we played, because one group wants to use the old system. The new players are coming in. They only have the new rule book. And the old players are trying to reference stuff, do things with the all the expanded rules. And then the other one's like, well, that's not in the rule book.
Yeah.
Because you're using the dumbed down rules. So it's not in there. So I guess, and it's like either we pick the dumbed down rules and only play the dumbed down rules, or we're going to play with the advanced rules. So.
Yeah. B&B says, didn't you show your battle mechs one time, Battletech mechs? Is that still going? I actually have some Battletech, and as a matter of fact, I saw them yesterday because I was looking for some other Old Hammer stuff, and I came across my Battletech stuff that's unpainted and painted. I probably will pick that up again one day. I did enjoy it. It's just with everything, you know, all the distractions out there, it's not one that I've made a core game at this point, but I'm not getting rid of it. Like, I'm keeping it, and and I love some of the stuff I painted, like the old Marauders and stuff. Like, I wouldn't want to get rid of those, to be honest. But I'll likely pick it up again in the future at one point. Just not something. But now, I don't know if you know B&B, but Rusty on his channel, Hell Corrects, like, he has a ton of Battletech stuff. So that's like one of his core games. And so, you know, it's basically talked about on every single Musty Wargamers show. That's why I drink. That's why I drink a sip, because it's like Battletech. And we don't even have Dwayne in the house right now, Plastic Crack Gaming. At least that he hasn't piped up if he is in the house yet, because he actually is also big into Battletech. So
yeah, I do over on my channel. I do once a week. I put out an episode. It's called "Mercenary Thoughts from the Inner Sphere," talking about Battletech. So I pick a mech a week and just kind of talk about it.
Dan says, I have blinders on over the past year to keep to my core games I'm currently working on. No games for me that need a new line of miniatures. Totally understand that. I mean, yeah. I still break it occasionally, like I did the Marvel game, but I am trying to stay focused as well. And I'm trying to even go back to what I consider like new projects for me that I've not even started, that I have miniatures in the stash already. So, and that's why in some ways it's hard to always see what's going on.
You know, to be honest, with what normally would go towards my gaming budget in the last 2 months has gone to that other hobby that you have, so. Mr. Shavelicious.
That's right. I'm not calling it a hobby yet. B&B says, so many games seem to come and go now. How do you know what to throw your money at when it goes away in a couple of years? Well, one thing for sure, though, is if you buy something where you get miniatures specifically for that game, which happens a lot, then you do run that risk. There are more and more generic rule sets are coming out that cover all periods, even in sci-fi and fantasy. So, you know, I guess Thud and Blunder, I'll just mention, is one that's like a fantasy-based game where you can use any miniatures you want, Dragon Rampant, fantasy-based, any miniatures you want. There's lots of different ones, and so that's an answer for the fictional stuff. But then if you're into historicals, you really never have anything to worry about, because if you're into historical war games, they have the different scales, but all the rule sets are generally not specific to a range of miniatures. You know, for the most part, you can get away. I think you could probably even use like Flames of War miniatures for like any 15 mil World War II game, right? I mean, it's there, and so that's one of the beauties of being on the historical side is they're used to those gamers being able to just move about and with their miniature collection. But now I actually think the fantasy and the sci-fi have caught up in that respect. They're starting to catch up. More and more, there's games now that they're making the game saying use whatever miniatures you want, even in fictional universe.
I think a lot of it is that you have a ton of Games Workshop players that play 40K that have a bunch of miniatures, and there's no market really to sell the things unless you already have a great painted army. There's no demand. There's so much of it. It's an overly flooded market, and so you get people that where they're sitting on all these miniatures, and then they get this generic set of rules come their way. They can use their Games Workshop miniatures or any type of sci-fi, but you know, typically Games Workshop is the most popular style of fantasy or sci-fi miniatures that are on the market.
Bill
Almost
said,
everybody seems to have some of those.
Bill says Fallout miniatures seem to be popular these days, and I wondered about that. I didn't write that on my list, but I came across it. It does seem to come up. I know it was a really popular video game. I don't know how popular the game itself is.
We have the Fallout game here. My son bought it, and he thought about playing it, but he just never. He bought it, and it's like, oh, you want to play this sometime? Sure, let me know. He never let me know yet, so it's sitting on the shelf.
That happens a lot.
Yeah,
but it's weird with miniature games on your shelf. The whole Einstein's theories with time and space, kind of really come into effect, because it might seem like a week since you bought that, but it really is 4 years since you put it on that shelf and you started to paint it. You time travel.
There are times I really think that it's like, do I even pull the wrapper off some of these games until they actually start? It's like, oh, we're going to play this. Okay, I better pull the wrapper off and put them together.
Yeah,
type of thing. It's like, until that point, it's like, it's still new in box and NOS. So
right,
new old stock.
Chris says, I play Alpha Strike for BattleTech.
That is a different character all together. That's there's classic BattleTech, and then there's obviously Alpha Strike. They got a new version of Alpha Strike coming out, or have come out with a new version of it. So that's, I guess you could consider that a new addition to the game world. There's
one game that was kind of like, it seemed like it was similar to Frostgrave. It was called Rangers of, you remember the name of it? It's Rangers of something, and it's like a game that's a skirmish game that you do scenarios, and it's supposed to be pretty good, actually, and I think that they've come out with another edition for it. It seems to have done pretty well. Like, it seems to come up quite a bit, and it's really, I think it's sold a lot online. Like, I think you can get a hard copy or a copy of it, but it's actually oftentimes sold by PDF. Does that ring any bells for you?
It's ringing a bell, but I'm just not sure exactly.
I know it's not Rangers of Shadow Deep or Irwin or something like that. It's another fantasy sort of name after it. Maybe somebody in the audience knows it, but I think that one I just see that it seems to have a following and keeps coming up quite a bit for like the fantasy skirmish side. I thought Blood Bowl, it's not new it coming back, but I thought that's done pretty well as a specialist game coming back and it's Games Workshop.
Yeah, I have some Blood Bowl miniatures. Get some Skaven.
Yeah, some of the newer ones?
Yeah. Okay. I sold probably about 4 years ago. I sold off my old Blood Bowl box. And after I sold it off, then the word come out that they're coming out with a new edition of it. It's like, I guess I got rid of it just in time.
Rangers of Shadow Deep. So I was right when I said Shadow Deep. I thought, for whatever reason, that reminded me of D&D. I thought there was a Shadow Deep in D&D. But Rangers of Shadow Deep, it seems to be pretty popular. So
then we have, there's that one. You're talking about the Mr. BM Builder. Talking about it has the armor cast mechs. There's the old armor cast mechs and 40K vehicles and Titans.
I love that stuff. I love the look of those.
Yeah, it's like, our group, our old 40K group, that we still play every once in a while. A lot of us have that stuff, the old armor cast stuff. I used to have, I wish I still had it, was that the Orc Spleen Ripper and the God Smasher. Those are the two resin vehicles that I had. I still got the old battle wagon. Still have that.
That's kind of a, so BAB says, why don't Forge World let Games Workshop do Death Corps of Krieg and shop? Sorry for all the questions. That would kind of bring us into a totally different topic. But I think the quick answer is that they've kept themselves in certain lanes within their own company in some ways. Like, they have like their book publishing, they have like sort of a specialist model company, which is Forge World. It's like very specialized. Then they have their mass produced kind of throughway, which is like Games Workshop. So it's probably mainly for business reasons.
Well, there was a bit of a crossover because Forge World did the 30K miniatures.
Mhm.
And then Games Workshop came out with all those plastic 30K miniatures. And
Yeah,
then
and
all the resin 30K miniatures over in Forge World disappeared.
yeah. Oh, they had that. That was when they did the something of Caliph board game, right? And they had
Yeah.
like a lot of the Space Marines 30K. So Bill says Osprey Publishing's opened the floodgates on miniature rules that use generic miniatures. I think that's true.
Yeah.
Like that is definitely true. That's a lot of them, you know, seem to be the Osprey.
I'm
Blue
just
Book.
curious, you know, Osprey Publishing is like, how much do they really, they obviously do well because they keep coming out with a new set genre of rules. You know, they just seems like that set of just keeps expanding and expanding. A little book comes out here, a couple there, a couple there.
I don't know if this says anything, but they're on Amazon, right? Like
Yeah.
you can, and so if you can get these books on Amazon, I mean, it's
a mass market.
Yeah, you know, and so and also they're pretty affordable too. You know, I mean, if you want to, depending on where you are and whatever, when the book came out, I mean, you can drop $20, sometimes less, you know, Canadian, and get yourself a rule system to flip through and put it on your shelf. It's pretty easy, you know, in that regard. So Chris says he uses Fallout miniatures for other games. And Todd says that Osprey's rules have been an interesting thing to watch. I think that is true. Like, there's a lot of, because there are different authors, like you do get a fairly diverse mix of opportunity, you know, within that line of books. Chris says, I have the new one and still play old school BattleTech, but less players. Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know. You know, if you notice, neither one of us had really mentioned a lot of really new games. Like really new games, you know, like a lot of it was just, both of us kind of mentioned really popular games, like games that have kind of, and one of the things, it kind of goes a little bit into my thought that the tabletop gaming world isn't that much necessarily different than other gaming kind of you know, business environments or circles and niches, but it's really, there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of games out there, but there's just a lot of games that just, it's probably really hard to be successful and necessarily, depending on how you define success, you know, you making it so it pays for itself might be good enough for some people if they're doing what they love, but at the end, hopefully not losing money. But at the end of the day, I suspect that it's really difficult, you know, to really stand out in some of the markets right now with this much available.
Oversaturated market, it's hard to stand out.
Yeah.
And when you're standing in the shadow of a big 800-pound gorilla, it's also hard to stand out too.
Mm-hmm.
The big squeaky, noisy machine monster in the room has a tendency to attract a lot of attention. And you know, Todd here, he brought up, we talked about Gaslands, and the very first thing on the top of my list was Frostgrave.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, it's, you know, it's Osprey slash what's the name of the actual company? But you know, it's I like the aspect of Frostgrave because you can use any type of miniatures you want. It's got a fancy setting. You can, you know, it's kind of a skirmish game slash battle it out with your neighbors, or you can co-op with them too. So.
Right. Yeah. And that Todd's talking about the Osprey books, and then Victor says with the Osprey series of rules, you can use your historical miniatures pretty easy, which is great. I mean, we could do another whole topic on Osprey versus other kinds of things. I mean, I think if you're interested in sitting down and just getting pretty quickly through the rules and being able to play a pretty short, straightforward game with friends, you know, I think the Osprey rule books are really good. And I'm not trying to generalize. My only issue with the Osprey books, and I have some of them, and I like to buy them when they interest me, is that with the sort of format that they're in, sometimes if you're wanting like a kind of like a real clunkier, but in a good way, rule set with a lot of depth and something that's going to spend a little more time on. It has its limitations sometimes, the space cover to cover, I think. And so it really just depends on what you want. For some folks, they don't want anything like that. Like they've kind of put those kinds of games aside, you know, and it just depends on what you want, I think.
Yeah, I always look at the Osprey stuff is something to get your miniatures into play, so you can use it is not over elaborate. It's a set of rules that can be used quickly. You can get a lot of games in if you want to. It's like you can play an hour and get a game in with a lot of these things, and then you can just reset and go again. So if you're set, it's like, oh, we got 4 hours to play, you can get 2, maybe 3 games in that time period.
Yeah, and for me, Dragon Rampant, that's for me why I like it. It's excellent for that reason, I think. B&B says, whenever I go into a Games Workshop store, I feel like a chip at the beach. So hard sell makes me want to get out of the store ASAP.
Yeah, it's like the moment you walk in, I guess it's been about 2 years now, 2.5, that we finally have a Games Workshop store in our city, the first one in the state. And the only time I ever seen any Games Workshop stuff, actual store, was when you go to a convention and they'd be there. And that was the only time I'd ever see them. And then when they finally showed up and you walk in, it's like, hey, welcome. It's like, can we show you all your stuff? We can sell you something over here. And it's like, whoa. It's like, well, have you ever played? No, I haven't. Only played for 30 years. I don't know anything about it. So they go, oh, okay.
True story. One of my friends went into the local Games Workshop, and the guy came up to him and was talking to him, and he said something. He'd mentioned, he said, well, what are you playing, and this and that. And he'd mentioned something about bolt action, and he mentioned Rick Priestley. And the guy said, yeah, I think that guy used to work here, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's the same thing.
He told me the story, he just looked at me, and he was like, really?
My head hurts. Well, it's the same thing. It's like my friend and I we're at the Games Workshop store. I've said this story before. Some of these may not have heard it, but it's like I lay down my arm, and it's like, you're supposed to use only Games Workshop miniatures at the GW store. And it's like, well, you can't use those here. They're not Games Workshop miniatures. Like, yes, they are. It's like, no, they're not. It's like, yeah, they are. It's like, they're from the late 80s and early 90s. They're like, oh, I wasn't even born then. Like, oh my God, my head hurts.
Dan says the market is definitely saturated, and Chris says, I think I own almost all Osprey books, lots of lab. I love collecting rule books. I have played almost all of them. That's actually impressive.
That is very impressive.
That you buy all of them, but you probably but that you play all of them, because I actually do neither. I try not to buy too many because I actually prefer painting and hobbying more than reading rules, and I like to find a good set of rules that I like and then get immersed in them. I find in some ways I'm not the norm with Wargamers in that regard. I know a lot of people that like to read rules. I think I meet more people like that than myself, where I read the rules it's almost bad, because I should be reading the rules first before I start painting and organizing my models. I have been caught where I actually start painting and doing all that stuff and then realize I need more of those.
I've done that where instead of really going in depth into a set of rules and figuring out what's the best to use and stuff, it's like, oh, I really like to look at these miniatures. I really like to look at those. And you buy a bunch of those, you paint them all up, and then realize, like you said, oh, I need I just spent all my money on all these, let's say, equivalent of elites and specials when I need troops.
Todd mentions it's probably a different topic, but he likes the easy rules by Osprey. They usually interest him, and he can get into them easily. But then after you play them being too easy, he soon loses interest. And I find that can be the case for me. I mean, I have had really different experiences. Like Inner Majesty's Name is one of my favorite Osprey rules, and so is Dragon Rampant. There's some that I definitely could see myself throwing down in the future, even though it's an easier game or whatever, like enjoying it. And some of them can have some difficult intuitive aspects to the mechanics that are interesting. Just because they're small doesn't mean there's not some depth to them,
Yeah.
And I find that is the case sometimes. But like, I didn't really enjoy Rogue Stars when I tried it, and one of the reasons was I thought the character building was quite amazing, but just for that particular game wasn't really, the mechanics just wasn't for me. And so it just kind of depends, I think, at times on the person. Some people might really love it, and then some you may not.
Yeah, it's I always find that sometimes I'm more inclined to want some more meat and potatoes, really hard core rules to go with it to actually create the flavor.
Mhm.
And some of the easier play rules just is like, yeah, they're great for just throwing down for a quick game or something. But if I'm really want to get into a genre, I want something that's got some meat and potatoes to it.
Mm-hmm. One last one I throw out there, and then we'll take this last comment. We have another topic too tonight we should go on to. But Burros and Badgers, I didn't put on my list, but to be honest, because they have actually just put out an expansion, campaign style system expansion, and I know a lot of people that are kind of getting into it. Like I know Dan is, and Viv at Rubbish In, Rubbish Out, and there seems to be some battle reports on YouTube, and so that's one that's actually I don't think is going away. I think it's been successful. I think it's a testament a little bit to the mechanics too. Like I think it is a pretty decent game when you look at it.
Yeah, that's the when I was the first time I got to look at the rule book and see what it's like. Oh, like this is very. When I was over at Dan Booman's house, and I was like looking at it, and going, I could see myself really getting into it and going to town on it, and it's still something that's clicking in the back of the head because I like it because it seems like it's a skirmish game system where you don't have to spend a lot of money to get into it. And that's very appealing to me is that when you have so much stuff on the table to use and play or paint for that matter, it's like I don't want to really get involved too deep into something new because like when Dan said he's got the blinders on. It's like I have to do that. I'm very bad when it comes to throwing the blinders on. So I need to keep them on because I get distracted by the shiny, that goldfish syndrome. You see the new game come out there, and you're like, oh, I need to get that.
So we'll kind of get through these last comments here. Are you okay maybe to move on to the next one?
Sure.
We have an interesting topic here too because actually it kind of revolves the hobbying side too. So Bill says, I once tried to play a Warhammer Ancient Battles game at GW, but they had a problem with it, which that's kind of interesting. It's funny because I guess you could bring down whatever miniatures you want for that.
Bring whatever Games Workshop miniatures, bring them down, but it might have been where they don't even know that they used to produce it. Because that's something I'm finding is that just because they work there doesn't mean they know much about only what's new. What's the newest product on the shelf is about the extent some of these guys what they know about the Games Workshop life.
We got a bunch of comments here, but we got two where folks that bought stuff because of us. They've said Beam says that he bought the Caledonian Mormaris because of you. Now is that one? The name I'm not familiar with that. Is that the
because of Todd?
Could be. Maybe you could type in what he means by that one. I'm not familiar with it. I don't think that's an Infinity. Maybe. I'm not sure that. I don't think that's within the Infinity factions. I'm not sure. And then Infinity. It is Infinity. Okay. So it's not my faction in Infinity, but I know you're doing a different one, and at least I don't think it is. At least I use for Adriana. I use the U.S. Adriana, and I know there's other ones within Ariadna that I don't collect. And then I do the. But I know that BMB's picked up a number of cool Infinity models, and I've commented on his channel because he likes picking those up because of the detail on the models and stuff, even if he's not using them within the game. And so. Then also, Victor says, I blame you guys for making me buy Blood and Plunder and World War I miniatures.
Blood and Valor, yeah. Yeah.
I said Blood and Plunder. Same company, right? Blood and Valor?
Same company, just different name. There's that bloody name in it. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's like, a few, let's see, on our list. Did we miss anything? Test of Honor. I think Bill has that one. Saga. Blood Red Skies.
Yeah.
There's another one. Okay, we just started talking about Infinity. Okay, there's expansions always coming out with for bolt action, so you could almost consider theater
Yeah.
advances. We talked about Game of Thrones, BattleTech. So
I was looking at a lot of stuff, and to be honest, when I was researching for this, there's a game called Riot Quest. I never even heard of it, but it actually had a lot of articles on it and stuff, and I never even heard of it. But maybe it's popular now. I don't know at all. But it seemed to have a lot of, information out there over the last year. Yeah, so why don't we can kind of catch up on the comments at one point, but we'll start getting into our next topic. And so this one, maybe people can put in their comments their hobby catastrophes, but we thought it'd be interesting just to reflect back over time on hobby catastrophes. So things that, whether it be something that happened, a breakage or anything that just kind of made you be like, oh God, and so just how many of the, I'm sure with the amount of time you've been actually in the hobby, Rusty, that you've seen your fair share. Which ones did you kind of think about and come up with?
Well, it's like when you brought up the topic, and I was like, my first response was, oh, you're setting up for a tournament, playing a BattleTech tournament, and you got your miniatures all set up and on your old board to play the tournament, and you set them down, and somebody walks by and hits the triangle. You're like, you just watch all these nicely painted miniatures just explode because they're made of metal, right? They explode in little bits everywhere. And you're like, well, okay, sweep everything up. It's like, here's the bases. We're putting the bases out now because that's all that's left of them.
Yeah.
Because I don't have any glue with me. So that was the one that popped right in my head immediately. Welcome to Gen Con.
Yeah. And I had a similar experience. I went to and actually Lord Draconum, who's in the comments here, Brad, I believe he was there for this. But one of the first times, I think it was Saga version 1. It wasn't even version 2. But I brought out my Anglo-Danes, for a game, and I had my box there, and the whole thing tipped. And I think I caught it when it was in midair, but like half of the box, just all the miniatures came out. And these are metal miniatures, and kind of hit the floor. And so I had to do repair jobs as well as luckily I had my levies were plastic, so a lot of those that fell did okay in comparison. But man, when that happens, it can almost just, particularly if it happens at the beginning of a game day, that could just basically ruin your day out.
Yeah. So yeah, it was later on, it's round 2 or so, and it's oh, you're supposed to be using mechs to play the game. I had mechs, and it's you see these bases where you just see the foot. You got the little base part, they got the little foot parts where they connect in, and that's all you see. They were there at the beginning of the day. So you want to make an issue of it, you can see me get very, very angry. You don't want to see me when I get green.
Have you had any other hobby catastrophes at home at your table?
Okay. Here's another one that was really disastrous. We were over at somebody's house, and we were playing a Starship combat game system, and I had all my full thrust. That's one of the games we had, and I had all my full thrust miniatures in this box. Right, it's a plastic box. I used fishing tackle boxes galore. If you've ever seen, when we were doing live streams over there, you've seen the big stack of fishing tackle boxes, plain old tackle boxes. Well, I had one of my fleets was in this tackle box, and it clicks shut so it doesn't come out and everything, and it just happened to be sitting on the table. I was not using that fleet, so I just had it off to the side. And we're sitting there playing away, and all of a sudden here's I'm like, what the heck is that? Walk in there, here's the guy's kid.
Oh,
grabs
gosh.
the plain box, trying to get the stuff out. He's smashing it on the concrete floor.
Yeah.
And one corner of the we're talking these plain old tackle boxes are pretty tough. He already broke one corner.
Yeah.
Everything inside was just shattered. It was it became a nice rattle.
I suppose this could be a whole nother topic, but the idea of little kids running up and grabbing your miniatures while you're in the game store, I think almost everybody that's played in a game store has had some sort of experience with this, whether it be seeing it or worrying about it happening. But I was playing Saga one day in my local game store, and I saw like a couple coming, and I saw a little kid start running right like towards us, and he like runs right up, and he's like right in front of the table, and his hands are he's kind of like, and I'm just like, these look really great, right? They're just for looking, not for touching.
Yeah.
I'm like looking at the parents and I'm smiling because I don't want to like get in the parents' face. Like I'm not really wanting a negative experience, right? And so I'm just like, oh, how are you? Like, yeah, these are great. They're just for looking, not for touching.
Yeah.
And then like, I'm like looking up at the parents just so they can like, get some recognition, like grab your kid, you know what I mean? Like, and have no problems whatsoever. But that can be an issue for sure. I mean, and in all honesty, it's sort of a gray area, but I consider it a narrow gray area because, to be quite honest, I think everybody should be able to have the expectation that like their stuff's not going to get ruined by a kid, but at the same time, you don't want to be a jerk about it, right? Like I think if you can jump in there and do it in a way that is, prevents it from happening and it doesn't create any bad feelings, it's better.
I guess I was raised as like if you see something going on, I was taught to put your hands in your pocket or behind you and just kind of look up with, and look, you're not supposed to touch anything without any. You go to somebody's house, you don't touch anything.
Yeah.
Or else you get a backhand.
So
I was like, you learn that, but there's some parents that you see here comes the kid, because over our local shop is like one of the at certain times the local daycare. They meet there to drop kids off and stuff like that. And they spend a little time. So if you're playing it down, all of a sudden here they come in, and you're like, stay back.
Yeah. So Brad says, yes, it also happened to me with you, Palmer, my Battletech. It's true. He dumped his miniatures once and I was there. And it is like the worst thing. Like, honestly, like a lot of it has to do with the storage solutions you choose to use and how you like keep them at the game place, like I think it's real easy to have boxes that have lids that are flexible on the top to tip over and things like that, when like it's hanging over the table or whatever. So we've got a few comments here and then we can go to some of our others. So Bill says, I forgot to take my Eldar 40K army out of my car and the Arizona sun melted them down. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
That's I see them warped.
Oh, that is sad. Oh man.
My brother did that.
A whole army too. Like that would drive me insane.
Yeah, my brother he left his Gray Knight army in the trunk of his car when he was at Camp Dodge. It just melted him. We were supposed to play that night. It was like 100-something degree day, and they just warped them.
B&B says, I use the Tamiya flat base. You're supposed to mix it with paint. I just put it on the end like the top coat, and my whole tank turned white after hours and hours on it. Oh gosh.
Oh yeah,
man.
Like the frost. It became frosted.
Oh man. So the flat base. You're supposed to. Okay, so it's like a technical product, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to mix it with the paint. Oh man. Victor says, this wasn't me, but a friend at a convention had his homemade terrain fly off his car while driving to the convention. It had been tied to the roof of the car. Oh, man. Oh. Wow. I thought you were going to say that he kind of like left it on the back of his hood, like, and then like went in and drove away with it on the back, but it was actually meant to be tied to the car. So I guess, was it tied in bins? Like where he had his bins tied on the roof, or did he just have like a big castle on the top of his car?
Like,
I'm your traveling Renaissance festival.
It's just like Easy 8 Enterprise, where they had everything loaded up on their trailer. And they were towing the trailer to go to a convention. Yeah, I was also going to the same convention to meet up with the guys, and it caught on fire and burned to the ground. Oh, so that's a major disaster right there.
Fire hazard.
Yeah.
Claude says he didn't know that Rusty and Dan gamed together.
We live in the same state. We're only a little over an hour apart from each other.
So B&B says, you got a lot of problems. Let's keep it real. I'm not sure which set of problems he's talking about, but I definitely agree with the first part. I know that that's well established, that we have a lot of problems. Brad says, I left my bag unzipped and it fell when I picked up the bag and they went all over the place. Yes, that's when we were playing Saga. Dan says, so we're doing everything here. We're doing like fire, like we're doing like sun,
flood.
Flood. So now Dan says, I had my basement flood and ruin a bunch of my research books and gaming magazines. We have since made changes to prevent that from happening again. Yeah, that would be really, man.
I've been there. I know what that's like.
That would be so disappointing.
The flood of 2003. It was during the fair. Somebody threw a whole bunch of garbage down the storm drain, and we had a massive deluge storm hit. It just rained and rained and rained, and all the sewer systems backed up. The stuff went down the street, plugged up down here, and we had water, sewage come up through the drain. That's usually a drain, and the sump pump couldn't keep up. It was coming up that fast. So we had a good foot of water in my basement here. So I would have been splashing right now. And I had everything that was on my lower, I had everything on shelves. But who would think that you would have a foot of water in your basement? So everything that was on the bottom shelf and everything all got sogged. Because I kept a lot of my Epic 40K box sets on the bottom. And they all got wet. And the only thing that was left of them was I had to keep everything in Ziploc. So it was like I'm pulling out the Ziploc. And it's like, oh, that's all screwed. That's trash. That's trash. That's trash. Well, everything that's in Ziplocs is still good. So
yeah. So BNB clarified. He says, sorry, the kid's touching your stuff. You said I don't have a problem. Yeah, it's true. I do have a lot of problems with it. I'm just trying to do my best to actually make the best out of a bad situation. So then Victor says that it was terrain boards, like having like 4x8 boards on the top of the car. Oh, yeah. Okay. Even that though. Well, I've tried to actually bring 4x8 boards home from like Home Depot, like MDF, in order to just cut them down at my house. And I was dumb enough to think that by holding my hand, like, on the top of my car and driving, that I would be able to, I was going to keep it down, And, I don't remember what I did in the end, but I know the next time I had them cut them out at the place into a couple of sections.
Because on a side note, it's like, it's never a good thing to not try to tie down a mattress. Somebody had to, we're moving to a new house, my brothers and I were just like, we thought this would be a great idea. Just take they had little Ranger trucks. One of my brothers did. So they put their beds on there, and it had one of the brothers was hanging on. They had a light bar on the top. So he's hanging on the light bar, laying on, figuring he'd be fine. He was going down the road about 55 and the wind pecked it. And it's like, he didn't have his tie strapped down. Picked the mattress with him on it.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why ships used to move with sails. I mean, honestly, you get enough surface area with that wind coming, and you can't keep it down. So, I mean, it's really hard. And Todd says that he's kind of referring to Dan's flooding thing. He says that a ton of sewer water spilled on my freshly painted 15mm models. Oh my gosh. That would be nasty.
Exactly
That'd be hard
how he feels.
That would be hard to know what to do with him after that.
I'm just lucky enough that when this basement filled up with sewage, it smelled kind of bad. And it's like our floor, though, down here, we have these square 1 foot by 1 foot rubber tiles that we could just lay down. We had to pull everything up. We bought these garbage bins. Rubbermaid garbage bins, filled them up, bucket of bleach, and then just tossed them in there, and it was nasty.
Looks like we got Curtis in the house.
Yes.
Hey, Curtis. We're having a lot of fun with this topic, just of hobby disasters, and we're asking people in the comments to put all of their kind of worst disasters they can think of. And we were talking about kids, like at the gaming shop and grabbing your stuff, and BNB says, I've seen kids pull models off the competition table and run off with them to show their parents. Parents off having a coffee and let their 6-year-old loose. Oh, man. Honestly, I'd be scared as a parent. See, I'm the kind of person that if I had my kids with me and they're that age, I'd be more worried about some of the individuals out there that are really like intense. like even if I didn't think my kid was going to really do something, I'd be more. I'm like the type that's a little overly sensitive with that. Like I'd be the one like there telling the kid these are for looking, not for touching, not the person sitting down with their stuff. Like that's the way I am. But man, yeah, I'd be worried about that for sure.
I've been there where you have a kid just come up to the table and grab miniatures and go, they're running around. It's like, that's mine now. You're like, no, please give it back.
Bill has a lot of good ones because he talked about his ones getting melted in his car. And this one, I once primer sprayed miniatures and left them in the backyard to dry. My puppy chewed them all up. So, like, this is on the ground, and basically nobody's claimed it, so it must be mine.
Has anybody here, other than me, had a bird run off with one of their primed miniatures? I wanted to prime a bunch of miniatures white, so I had white primer on. And I'm sitting there watching. It was like, they should be able to come in, and all of a sudden, a crow goes, grabs one of them and flies off into the tree, and we're like, what?
I think I'm not sure if it's because of tonight's discussion, but Brad's saying he's moving his gaming room up to the top floor. And I would say that you probably have got enough evidence here that that's probably a good idea. I'm in the basement, however. But I suppose we can each give one. To be honest, my examples for tonight aren't nearly as good as the ones in the comments. But I just, right now you can see carpet right. Well, I can't really even point to it here. There we go. Yeah, there's carpet right there, but that's a throw rug. But basically, this hobby room has just like vinyl, like vinyl strips. It's like they're like vinyl planks, that you put down. And I did that because many years ago when I first started the YouTube channel, I had carpeting in here because it was like just fully carpeted room, and I was learning how to airbrush. And basically putting airbrush paint in my thing. And I just like dumped a bunch of airbrush paint, and it was red on like white carpet. And so basically that was it. It was like, now granted, it was that little area was for me, but I just feel bad about that because it's like, okay, so I'm never going to use this area for anything else now. It's like, we have replaced the carpeting years later, but once you kind of start spilling like lots of paint in your house on the carpet, then that like, yeah, that was one of my catastrophes. But I spilled paint on my desk a number of times, not a lot, but yeah. When I start spilling it on your carpet on the floor, so now if it ever happens, I can wipe it up quite easily.
The only time I really spill any paint is like I'll be dipping into something to get a little bit, and all of a sudden the ferrule at the tip, the brush will catch on the little thing. Just as you're pulling the brush back, it catches and just knocks it over. That's typically the most common way I knock over paint.
I'm finding that a lot of times I'm needing translation for BMB for some reason. He goes, hold my beer, try a kookaburra. You just froze Rusty. He's like, he doesn't even know what to think of that. He's just completely frozen now. He's not moving, he's petrified. And he's going to zone out in 1, 2, 3. Or is it me that's frozen? I'm not sure. Are you with us?
I'm with you.
I said the word kookaburra and you disappeared.
Like, I was going to freeze 1, 2, 3. And I was like, okay, what am I going to freeze?
Okay, he says it's a bird. I think I've heard of that. So a kookaburra has grabbed your model?
Yeah.
What he's
the same as probably like a crow equivalent.
Yeah.
I imagine.
Well, and like we have magpies in Canada, and I don't know. Do you know what those are, Rusty? Magpies?
Yeah, I know what a magpie.
See, I didn't know what it was until I moved here, but they're kind of like blackbirds and things like that. Like they see shiny objects and things like that, and they like them, right? And so that I'm wondering if a kookaburra is similar. Like they basically they like shiny things, right? And they're also like magpies are pests. I know this is getting off topic, but the thing that my kids talk about, and they weren't even there for this, but the story that's passed down in my family for ages about how stupid I am is I moved here. I'd never seen a magpie before, and they're white and black with like blue on the wings, and they're quite like, if you've never seen one before, they're quite striking, and they're big, but they're also pests. Like they go through your garbage, like they're like squirrels. And so the first time I saw one, I said to my wife, "Oh, look, somebody must have lost their exotic bird. And she's looking at me, she's like, what the hell are you talking about? She's like, that's a magpie. Chris, if Chris is still here from Walkabout Games, I'm sure he's probably laughing because they're all over the place here. And I'm like pointing it out and saying, somebody must have lost their exotic bird. I'm this American that comes to there has never seen it before.
Yeah, they don't get down this way at all. So
yeah. So Brad says losing pieces of miniatures in vents are not great. That's true. I mean, I didn't kind of rank it up with like big catastrophes of like having your stuff melted, but like even losing stuff like little plastic pieces in carpet and then never finding it again. Like, you know, having stuff that just drops.
Carpet.
Yeah, something like that is a nightmare, you know, and you know, if you're in a hobby space and even if you haven't vacuumed a little bit, you have shavings, it can be almost impossible to find like a little hand or something like that, which is a nightmare.
The worst really at-home disaster when it comes to, you remember the video I put out where they had the One Forge World model, the transport, where my son was picking a box game off the shelf back. It was right behind Supergirl, right there. And there's a bunch of stuff stacked up, and he wanted one of them out there, so he pulls it out, and all of a sudden the whole stack just comes down, hits my desk. That's right, you know, my desk right there. Hits it, and the model's on top of the desk, running right about where the light is. Hits it and goes, kicks it off, and I was like, no. And it being it's resin, it exploded just into bits. Instead of the nice thing about a metal miniature, when it explodes, it's just little bits of metal that you can glue back together.
Yeah,
this was like a resin jigsaw puzzle, and you're like, oh my.
Resin doesn't fall well.
No.
Did you have another one on your list?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I got a bunch. Yeah.
What do you got for another catastrophe?
Well, let's see. What else was we just had the exploding resin model. Okay. What was the other one? Another good one. Oh, it was at a convention. We had a whole bunch of miniatures. We were playing Starship Troopers. They had all the plastic miniatures, you know, the bugs and everything out there and across the table. And this big guy, you know, he's probably about 6'5", you know, big tall guy, and he had this big massive gun on him. And he's like, he's standing there for a while watching the game, and it was like, and one of the guys is trying to reach into the middle of the table to move a miniature. I'll get it for you. And he reaches over and grabs it, and his stomach goes across all the miniatures on that side of the table. It's I'm like, no. And he just looks at him. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, you just crushed my.
You're like, damn it! Do they let you freely walk around on your own?
And this is not the worst thing. He's got this, you know, the bug, you know, and he's got this bug stuck to his stomach on his shirt. I'm like, reached over and grabbed it. I'll take that back. And he's like, I'm sorry. And he just kind of turns around and walks away. I'm like, well, I got a lot of assembling to do. And they were all painted too. So.
Oh man, that's like the grown-up child.
Yes. I'm like, oh man.
So we're still on birds because Brad confirms, because he's local here in Calgary to me, and he's like, yeah, they're all over the place, the magpies. And B&B says magpies are here as well. How do you not know a kookaburra? Have either of you been to Australia? Well, I've not been to Australia. I have heard the name.
Yeah.
And I also know what a dingo is. I know what a kangaroo is, and I know what a koala is. But even though I've not seen half of them, you know, up close, but I've heard the name kookaburra, but I don't have an image.
The Outback here, so you know, there's kookaburra wings. So I've eaten kookaburra wings.
I know what a bloomin' onion is too.
Yeah.
I'm sure that like
coconut shrimp with kookaburra wings. I don't know what you're talking about.
B&B's probably like, we hate Outback in Australia.
That's not Outback. There's
nothing about that that's Outback. Now I do know I've heard that magpie or that style of bird is more than just in Canada. Like that there are different types in other areas of the world. They also look quite different. There are different like subspecies of it.
Yeah.
So he's got an example, B&B. You have to have super glued fingers glued together. I've had super glue on the end of my paintbrush. I then held it on my lips. Painful to get it apart. Not good. Trying to think of adhesives. I was working with some 5-minute. Oh, you would break into a second?
Yeah.
So actually, not only are we making a record tonight for the number of episodes for the Musty Wargamers, but Rusty is going into a second drink. The discussion must have been fairly animated because I've not seen you take a sip yet. What did you do with it? I'm almost convinced that you put it on the side. You didn't put it on the side and just grabbing another one?
I finally filled it up. This is another local brewery. This is XL Brewing. This is
okay.
So.
Well, it's rare that you're ahead of me tonight because I've not finished my first scotch.
Well, normally I if I'm drinking stuff, I sip it. But you know, that one was so good I needed another one.
So I actually have another boring one, but it was still really disappointing. I was within 2 years of being back in the hobby and trying to learn to paint, and I was really trying my best. Like on each miniature, I was doing Eldar for Warhammer 40K, and I was doing not a Farseer, but a it's escaping me. You know the guys below the Farseer. As far
Warlocks.
as Warlocks, thank you. I was doing a Warlock, painting him. And I was like pretty happy with the paint job. And then I go out and I'm using GW Purity Seal in my garage. And I frosted the entire thing. Like just, basically the entire miniature was ruined, the paint job. It was all like I sprayed it. It wasn't even cold or anything, just frosted. And then I'm like, what do I do about this? And so I'm like researching it, and you can apparently put like oil on it to try to, and there's some things you could do. I got it a little bit better, with trying to put some stuff after it. But to me, that's a bit of a disaster, and I've never used that stuff again. So now, not only am I really careful if I ever do use rattle cans, with temperature, and even distance and lots of things. I mainly use my airbrush for lacquering now, or varnishing, I should say. But I still think I have that original bottle of Purity Seal on my shelf. I've never used it since.
Yeah, let's see, what was it? My first the Smurf army for 40K.
Ultramarines.
Yeah, I was like trying to have a brain lock there. And the first time I ever painted a squad of Ultramarines, and I had the Testers doll coat. Actually, it was not. It was gloss coat. And I went out and left them outside, and it was really humid. So I took them outside to put the doll or the gloss coat on them, and it was really humid. And I went shh all over them, and then just like you said, frost. It isn't like what just happened. I'm not sure exactly what just happened, but that looks like crap.
Yeah. So we're on birds right now, and this can happen sometimes where we get onto a different topic. And so we have small flightless birds called roadrunners. I think I've heard of them before. That like to get into stuff here in Arizona. They are like mini velociraptors.
Well, they're really good painters because they can run up really fast, paint a cave or a tunnel and then actually have a train come out of it.
We have coyotes in Alberta, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's why we don't have roadrunners, but I think they have coyotes in Arizona too, from what I understand.
Lions. We got mountain lions, wolves, coyotes, and bears in Iowa. So.
Brad says miniature frosting is a pain. And then B&B says, what about when your partner says, I clean your room up, and then you have small parts lying around?
I put everything in, organized it for you, but you put everything in one big box. Like all the miniatures for all the different stuff is all put into one shoe box or something. I organized it for you. No, you didn't.
Yeah. Now that That's funny. I that doesn't happen to me, and it's funny because I'm not saying that I'm like necessarily the boss of the house by any means, but it's with my personality. Even my children do not go near my hobby space. If you guys think I'm intense now, you should have seen me 10 years ago, as my kids were like 4 and 5. But no, so that generally has not happened to me, but I could definitely see that happening. As B&B said, I've got problems.
My brother, he has a lot of problems, which is kind of funny. Is that his wife cleans houses and businesses. That she has a cleaning business, and she makes a lot of money doing it because she has a large crew. She has like 20 people working under her that does this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So when she comes home, when she wants to clean, she's a terror. So she'll go into where my brother's work area for his hobby. He has a room that's his hobby, like you have your hobby room. Mm-hmm. She'll go in there, it's like, well, this is a mess, and she'll just organize it, put it where she thinks is organized. And you'd be like, well, I remember one time we're just recently, this, about 3 months ago, he was like, I want you to take care of this. Could you paint this for me? I said, oh, sure. I'll walk in and he was like, what? Where is everything? Well, I cleaned it. It was organized. Well, it wasn't organized to me. So she just took boxes and just shoved everything into boxes and then shut them. I was like, oh my God. And then she took battle. It's like, you're talking, you had 20 mechs that were sitting on the table that were unassembled, right? He had them laid out, cleaned all up, and he's going to start assembling them. She took all the pieces and put them all together in one box. Oh, he was mad.
I bet. So B&B says, you the boss, lots of laugh. Your wife said, that's my room. And I think he's referring to when I moved from my old room to this room. And that's true. It was basically her suggestion that things should change. And I kind of saw the light and went with it. And basically, his follow-up is saying, you're the barnacle on the ship of progress. Let's be real again. So it's true. The room I'm in now is bigger than the room I had before. But the room I had before was a bedroom. And it was all in the basement. And it was all set up the way I wanted it. And she was looking at it. And she's like, there's a bathroom next to this room. If people were to come over, like my parents or somebody, like I'd like to have it where they had a nice space to sleep in with the bathroom next to it. So why don't you take that room down the hall that's bigger for your hobby room? And so I just heard like bigger, like that's what I heard is bigger, like take the bigger room like down the hall. And and then we'll move this into being a bedroom. And it's true. I totally went along with that. And so,
wasn't that your fish room?
The room I'm in right now was at one time a multifunctional room that had like lots of fish tanks and racks of fish tanks, and I've gotten rid of all that stuff. I've downsized that hobby. And so but it also had space with big storage cabinets for games and other stuff that we had. It was storage. It had a treadmill and things like that too at one point. So
I sort of miss your videos when you'd be talking and stuff. You hear the gurgling in the background.
That's right. I had a lot of people commenting about that and some thumbs down too, saying like, I can hear water. I need to use the restroom.
The relaxing, the zen feeling of all the videos. Yeah. The bubbling water.
Looks like we got Mini Warmud in the house. Hello. He says, hey, yes, coyotes are a regular sight here in Arizona. So you're in Arizona as well. So is Bill. And so Landshank, who's on the chat, and he says, roadrunners are awesome to watch when they catch a small bird. They literally tenderize the bird in order to swallow the bird whole. So that's actually kind of odd. That's like a bird eating a bird. Huh? It's like like an eagle or a hawk like eating another bird. It's like kind of like up the evolutionary ladder of cannibalism, right? Like it's sort of like like a grizzly bear eating a black bear.
Well, in the animal world, it's food.
Well, it's important, right? It's important.
You got either you go hungry or eat something.
Slam the poor little bird over and over on the concrete.
Well, it reminds me of Game of Thrones when one of the guys, what's his name? Jamie Lannister was talking about his cousin who was like taking rocks and crushing snails. Ugh.
Yeah. Now, I don't think I've done this myself, but speaking of hobby disasters, I don't know I don't know if you guys have any like biggest fears. I think I may have done this once and I was okay, but my biggest fear is I'm the kind of person that whenever something drops, I tend to grab it, and I have really good hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
And so I've been in many situations where people are astonished, like I'll drop something or something will fly and I'll catch it, but I don't necessarily think about whether I should catch it. Like I'm kind of like a dog.
Or
right?
like an X-Acto knife.
Well, that's where I'm going. Is my fear is that I drop an X-Acto knife and I grab it, and so I've trained myself when I'm actually hobbying to whatever X-Acto knife drops, let it drop. Like pull your hands back, because I think I probably have grabbed it once, and I don't think I've ever had it done real bad, where I've really cut myself bad. But my worry is that it's going to go through my hand.
I caught the X-Acto knife.
Have you ever done it?
I've dropped an X-Acto knife on my foot before.
Yeah.
And luckily I had shoes on, and it actually stuck in the shoe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, ow, that actually poked me. I've cut myself many times with an X-Acto knife.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking about dropping something, you got these newer Games Workshop miniatures, some of the ones with the spiky bits on them.
Mm-hmm.
I have dropped one of those before, and literally just like you reach out and grab it, and you're like, it's like prickly cactus. And your hand is like, it's sticking in your hand.
Yeah.
And it's like you hear corn going, blood for the blood god. Thank you. Thanks for the sacrifice. And like, I didn't want to sacrifice.
BB says you got rid of fish for 1,000 lizard men.
Yeah.
Well, that's my life goal. I mean, the only thing better than 1,000 lizard men is 10,000, right?
Yeah. 10,000 fishmen.
Yeah. Lord Draconum's talking about the mountain. Brad, I'm not sure if he's talking about the 1,000 lizard men at that. Not sure.
It's either the plastic mountain, metal mountain, or the mountain from
That's right.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yeah. Victor says, finished painting a model and thought I'd grabbed a can of varnish and it was black primer. Oh, I think that actually beats out my frosting example, because at least there was something under the frosting with mine. Man, that would be bad.
That's starting all over.
Yeah, that would definitely be bad. And we got ouch to that.
Yes, I've done that. Except it was my Kolinsky brush. I had a brand new Kolinsky brush. Just bought it. And I'm like painting. It was like I set it down, and it was kind of warm in here, so you're a little sweaty. So I'm like reaching to grab something, and it stuck to the bottom of my hand, or right on my forearm. And I was like, no, it fell down. I was like, oh. I just snapped it. I was like, oh man. So I had this little stub. So yeah, it was still good. So but I had about that much wood left on it.
Well, this is kind of like I wouldn't call it a first world. It is a first world problem, but within the hobbying circuit, it's a little bit of a first world problem. But with my airbrush, I will at times just sort of manipulate the needle a bit when I'm cleaning it. Like I know that I don't want to get paint stuff back into the business end of the airbrush. I want to keep it in the front, but I'll actually, if I think I get some dried tip or some dried paint in the front, I'll actually move the needle and stuff. Working with my airbrush, there are times, like I can't tell you how many times I've stuck myself with the airbrush needle. And for me, that's even easier to do than an X-Acto knife, because with an X-Acto knife, I know there's a big problem up at the top of that thing, and I know that I don't want to have my fingers near it. But with the airbrush needle, it's a little bit more of a finesse situation. So I've stabbed myself a number of times with it, and so that actually comes up. That's not really a disaster. I would almost say it's a little minor thing. I never really hurt myself bad. It's not like cutting the tip of your finger off or anything like that.
About the only thing I really done bad with an airbrush was like had a fairly large model. It was Land Raider. Mm-hmm. And I was like, put different color. I think you've seen it. It was the spiral colored one, multi-colored one. And I was like, quitting the lane. And I was like, oh, okay, I must be out. And I looked and I was like, no, it's something in there. And I was like, pushed the button down. It goes, you're like, well, crap.
And that's
like,
one of those things.
You got this big blob all over your miniature. So that's about the extent of my worst airbrush moment. But
Well, and that's one of those things where you get the dry tip on the airbrush, you get a little bit of a clog, and you force that through. If you actually have your miniature in front of it, once it decides to give, it goes all over it.
yeah, it's like someone spit all over it.
Yeah, this is a minor inconvenience. However, it could be a big problem if you have no replacement. B&B says, I hate when you drop something and then you roll back in your chair and you hear a snap.
You just run right over top of it and you hear that crunching sound.
That's right. That's right. And Brad agrees. Well, I think we're actually fairly far into our show. And this has been a fun one. You know, it's funny. I'm almost going to say the hobby disaster topic was meant to be a little bit of a filler topic, like another topic after our other one of the new games. It was the second one thought of, which oftentimes our second topic, sometimes they're dual. They're kind of like when you go to a concert and you have, what do they call it when you have, it's been a long time since I've been to a concert, when you would have
the encore.
Well, no, you'd have, instead of having a headliner, you'd have two headliners, right? Like they're both considered equal. Like you ever see a show like that where they basically have like dual headliners?
Well, I've seen, there was Joan Jett, Quiet Riot, and Loverboy concert, so they were all primary. So
now you definitely just dated yourself. You just said Loverboy.
Hey, I had a girlfriend at the time. She wanted to go see Loverboy. I wanted to go see the other two.
But at the same time, we usually it's like we have our headliner and then we have our second topic. But actually tonight, I think the second topic actually was more interesting in the end. Even though I love to talk about the new games, this has been funny. And Lenchik says, Bill says, do you ever have an airbrush needle break on you? I definitely have had the tops bend, but I've never had the whole thing break.
Yeah, I
definitely had the tip bend. Yeah. B&B says, I've done that with Vallejo paint bottle as well. Squeeze too hard. Oh, no. Vallejo is bad for that because it easily dries in the tip.
I have a wire that's specifically for it will fit right in there. It's like every time when you open that thing up, it has to be opened up.
If you get some thick paint, it dries, and you can also get some thicker paint underneath the tip. Several times I've had that happen, and it's one of the only things that I don't like about Vallejo bottles is that propensity to do that, because otherwise I love Vallejo as a company, but that's happened to me, and you almost wonder whether it's purpose, because you almost inevitably lose a ton of paint. You know what I mean? That you don't use, you waste a ton of paint.
Yeah, you put it in you get your paint dish and you put a little bit in there. It's like, well, I only needed enough to cover a brush, but I got enough to do an entire miniature now.
Yeah, or an army.
Yeah.
Like literally. So, yeah, well, that was cool. That was a good topic. I think we had a lot of B&B's. Now he's referring back to the hand-eye coordination. Is that referring to when it blows up all over the table? Your previous comment, or the airbrush needle,
or reaching and grabbing your X-Acto knife as it's flying.
Oh yeah,
or just let it fly.
Man tool joke.
Yeah.
Well, that was good. So, so we're winding down on the season. We don't usually do videos for Musty Wargamers over the summer, June through much of August. We usually take a break. And so Rusty and I are going to talk about how many more shows we have left. I'm suspecting the answer is between 1 and 2. One of those two, 1 or 2, definitely not 3. And then we usually do occasionally we'll do I usually take the month of July off. And Rusty also will take some time off, and sometimes month of July, beginning of August.
August is usually my month that's my busiest. Into July through August is my busy time. So
yeah, but we'll pick up. We'll still have 1 or 2 shows left, and then we'll pick up again in September. That'll be season 4, which I can't believe. Wow. It's funny like that we've been doing this show for 4 years. It'll be going on to the 4th year. So that's kind of cool. However, I don't know if Curtis is still in the house. He's been doing shows for a long time too. He's been doing some cool live shows and interactive shows, and so they just have a tendency to go on if they're fun and they're good. And so we're discussing a little bit of a plan that we may end up actually contacting some folks that have been on the show before for the end of our season. And so we'll see how that works. And if that works out, then we might have a very interesting season finale. But thanks everybody for joining in. I actually find one of the best things about this show is the live people that join us and comment, particularly with a show like tonight, where we get so many ideas or good stories from it. Because at least for me, like, you had some good ones, Rusty, but for me, I actually feel like the comments were better, like the examples, than the ones that I had, on the topic. So,
well, the wonderful thing about tonight was that the guys were having pretty much the same exact things happen to them that happened to me. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember that same exact thing happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
You do stuff over the years and everybody seems to have the same problem eventually.
That's right. All right, everybody. Thanks very much. And we will see you. We will definitely do another Musty Wargamers likely in 2 weeks. We'll have the announcement. If you guys aren't on the Facebook page, if you'd like to join to get notice of the next show, we always usually do them 2 weeks, but we will actually give a little heads up of what the topics are going to be in advance on the Musty Wargamers Facebook page. And we do show models and like what we're painting, and just chat a little bit on the Facebook page throughout the week. If you'd like to join, you can always look us up. And thanks everybody for joining. Been lots of fun.
All right, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks over on my channel, and
we'll see you the next time the kookaburra flies.
Yeah, or the magpie comes to get you,
or the roadrunner, for that matter,
or the crows. Attack to the
right.
crows.
Okay, take care, everybody.
Good night, everybody.